Hello, welcome to Spotlight on the Valley of the Poets. This is one of a series of programs. Our guest for today is Rhina Espaillat, a very, very, very well-known poet from originally the Dominican Republic, and very shortly after she was born, she moved to New York City. And we will talk about that and all of her work for the past many, many years, and her teaching, her translations. Rhina does so many wonderful things. You live poetry. Would that be a way to say it?
That's about it. Yes, that's right. I fell in love with poetry at the age of 4 because I was living at the time with my grandmother, who was a poet.
Right. Right.
And I used to hear her with her friends reciting all the time. And I said, I don't know what the adults are doing, but it's a wonderful game. And I want to learn to do that.
Yep. Now, I would like to begin today with one of the earliest poets. If you remember, this town was founded in 1646, North Andover, by many families, one of which was the Bradstreet family. And that was Simon and Anne and her children. And she was the very first poet to be published in America, from America, and it was done in England, London, England, in 1650. And this is her book. It's a little tiny book that we have at the Stevens Library for sale, and then we also have your library in Newburyport has it for sale.
Yes, that's right.
And it is a lovely little tome, and I think that I will pick my favorite, I guess it's my favorite poem. To My Dear Children. This book, by any yet unread, I leave for you when I am dead, that being gone, here you may find what was your living mother's mind. Make use of what I leave in love, and God shall bless you from above. It is so simple. It's so delightful for children. They understand it, and I use it all the time for teaching. There's a missing word in the fourth line that makes all the difference if you're a poet. And the children understand it quickly after I explain to them if they didn't guess it. What was your living mother's mind? Now, the missing word is in. What was in your living mother's mind? I feel that if you have the word in, it means compartmentalizing things. But if you don't have that word, just as you said, you live poetry. Anne Bradstreet lived poetry.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yes.
And I see that in many people that I meet that I have been privileged to know through writing. And you're one of the best. Absolutely one of the best. I have to say that. So you started writing when you were very, very young.
That's right. I was 4. I didn't know how to write yet. But I would tell my grandmother, escribe esto para mí. Escríbeme esto. Write this for me. And she would put it down, of course, in Spanish.
Right.
But all of those early poems in Spanish are lost now. They all disappeared.
Oh, dear.
And by the time I came to the United States when I was 7,
oh, okay.
They were all gone. I thought my grandmother would hold on to them, but after she died, not only did my poems disappear, but hers. She wrote all the time. She never published.
Oh,
but she
dear.
wrote for people's birthdays, for weddings, for births of babies, and so on. And she was very modest about it. She said, "Oh no, I'm not going to publish. I'm not a real poet, but she was good, and she played the guitar and she played the piano. So she was quite artistic in her own way.
Oh, I wish they had been saved. These always, they're so easily lost. I mean, if you have a
Yes.
sculpture or if you have a painting,
Yeah.
it usually is saved. It doesn't get lost. But pieces of paper, they're the most easily done as far
Yes.
as being produced and the lowest cost,
Yes.
but sometimes the most precious.
Yes, that's right. And people don't always realize how precious they are.
Until
When I
later.
went back to the DR after a few years, and I looked for my grandmother's poems, the book had disappeared completely.
Oh
It was
my.
just a notebook, that's all it was. And it had been, I guess, thrown out.
Right, right. No one
I
thought
knew,
of
I knew people who lived into the house, moved into the house.
no one thought of the value at the time.
No.
Now, would you like to read? I know you have one from when you were 10.
Yes,
Yes.
1942. It's the first one that I kept in English. I arrived in New York in 1939. And I started writing, just a few months after arriving in English.
Mm-hmm.
I picked up English fairly quickly. It was less than a year. And this is the first one I thought was worth keeping. And it's called The First Snowfall. And it's typical immigrant writing because it's about an important difference in the landscape. It was the first time I had seen snow. I had lived for a few months in Washington, D.C. with my parents when they were representing the Dominican government here. My father's uncle was.
Okay.
So we lived there, but I don't remember snow there. It was just a few summer months, I guess.
Uh-huh.
This is called The First Snowfall. Fell on the first snowfall flowers from the skies, burying under heaps of snow the place where summer lies. And in that same tomb lies my heart, dead with summer's gladness, harried by the autumn winds, prey to winter's sadness.
Oh my, that's beautiful. You
Well,
were
it's very sad, but I was cold.
well, you were cold, and it was just something so foreign to you.
Yes, it was. And it took me time to make friends. It took me time to learn the language well enough to make friends.
And
I'm
did
a
you
very
ever make
sociable
friends?
person.
Did you
I
ever
don't
make
do well
friends?
without friends.
Did you ever make friends with Winter?
Oh, yes, now I like it.
Good.
Now I like it. I
Good.
enjoy it. It has a beauty of its own. I really
Okay.
appreciate all 4 seasons here. I don't think I could live in the tropics again.
I know. You don't have the 4 seasons.
No.
And
No,
I would miss that completely because
Yes, I would. But I want you to notice the showing off in this poem, because we had been talking about the landing of the Pilgrims and how the hunters would prey on the animals, P-R-E-Y.
Yes.
And anytime I heard a word that was new to me, I would write it down and make a point of using it somewhere. So I was very conscious of language. And then harried by the autumn winds, that's another one that I stole right from my teacher. So
that is
I would.
the colors of the leaves.
Oh, yes.
Oh my, the richness.
Yes. Oh, yes, yes.
That almost is, see, that's my inspiration. I'm a winter person. So I love the winter, always have. When you spoke about snow, I'm from Buffalo, New York, and that was a very common thing. And
I know all about it.
when we moved here in 1983, I waited for bad weather, and the people said, "Oh, we're going to have bad weather. We're going to have a big snowstorm." So the next day, I looked out on the driveway, and I thought, "Well, when's it going to come?" Because it was flat snow, just totally flat. And in Buffalo, you have mounds of snow that are the texture, and the mounds are wind blown and they don't move. You cannot shovel them until it starts to melt a little. You have to go through with a snowplow. You can't do as a shovel. So it's just a totally different kind of snow because it's wind blown from the lake.
Wind blown. upstate New York doesn't fool around.
No.
When it snows, it means
It
it.
snows, it
It
really,
means
but
it.
it's getting a little warmer there too, even now, unfortunately. The globe is warming much too much everywhere.
Much too fast.
Yes.
I have a magazine here from junior high school. May I show that?
Oh, I love it.
This is from the Pleistocene when I was young.
Skylines.
And
that's the name of it. Now, is that once a year that it comes out?
It would come out once a year, yes. And this happened to be the year of, I guess it was the year before my graduation. Yes, because I have signatures of all my friends here all over it. It was called Skylines, The World of Tomorrow.
Wow.
World War II had just ended.
Yes.
That's how far back I go. I'm a very old lady.
Oh, no.
And I want to read this. I want to read this particular poem, not because it's good, but because it isn't. And the reason it isn't good is that I was imitating other people. I was imitating the poets that I loved and read often. Mm-hmm. And I thought if I imitated their vocabulary and said fancy words and made believe that I had lived a very full, rich adult life, you know, cigarette smoking and martinis, that it would sound good. And that is very important to do, because if you write enough bad poetry, you learn how to do it better.
Right, right.
It's important to do that because that's when you look at it again, a second time after that, and a third time after that, you say, why was I faking this way? Why didn't I just write what I knew, what I really felt? So that's why I'm reading a poem with good intentions, but not much else. It's called Dust and Glory, and it's about New York, except that I invented too much. Look upon the rooftops of my city, the gray of winter skies matching the gray that spreads itself and weaves a smoky haze above the chimneys in the light of day. Look at the buildings standing against the sky, presumptuous buildings much too cruel and proud. They will not look upon the tenements nor gaze with pity on the swirling crowd. And in the nighttime, when the streets are black, the horns of boats are making noises. Hark! Now that's an impossible word for a 20th century person to write. You can't say hark in the 20th century. But I had read it in other poems, so it sounded good. I heard the breathing of the world just then, ever so faintly from some corner dark, and things that die, and things that fade away, and women weeping with such lonely eyes, the little nothings that have made a world good, noble purposes and stifled cries, and loneliness and sorrow and despair. Then, too, the happiness of spring returned. A million feelings in a million hearts, the bygone memories of things that burned, the human maelstrom in a crawling street, the thread of life by some disease undone, bittersweet dreams upon their wayward path, all dust and glory rolled up into one. And that's how you practice.
Well, if you could read just the first 4 lines again about the gray, read the top part, the beginning.
Okay. Look upon the rooftops of my city, the gray of winter skies matching the gray that spreads itself and weaves a smoky haze above the chimneys in the light of day.
Now see, that is not bad.
No, that's not. If I had stopped there, it would have been fine.
For your age, at that age, to observe the colors and the combination of the colors up above and then down below, because of course snow is gray in the wintertime. It gets dirty and you wait for another snowfall to clean it up a little.
Yeah, I was telling the truth, but then after that I went on to the melodrama, which is very tempting.
It is. It's comforting. It's comforting because it's usually there's a denouement, and you have to get to that.
Well, you get to that. Well, you know what happens with adolescents when you get even farther than junior high, you start writing love poems, because that's what Edna St. Vincent Millay did, and Sarah Teasdale, and Elizabeth Browning, and so on. And you have to do what these poets did because those are the ones you admire. And you do learn a lot imitating, but after a while, when you get to know a little bit more, you stop imitating and you say, I'm going to tell the truth now. I'm going to just be myself and use my own voice.
Well, how does
And that's
anyone learn anything, Rhina? Because a child imitates another person, an older person,
sure,
when they walk.
sure.
You have to imitate before
do.
you can fly.
You do. You imitate.
And learn your own. You
But
have to imitate words that you hear.
You have to imitate because that's how you kind of adopt your environment and you get adopted by it.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
you were so flexible to come from a Spanish-speaking country and then quickly learn English.
I was desperate to learn because I don't like to have no friends.
Right. Okay.
I needed.
Yeah.
But notice that I call it my city, the rooftops of my city.
Exactly. That was such a wonderful possessive.
Yes.
It seems as though
if you're an immigrant, you have to make it yours by loving it and by being part of it.
But you must have also had a very strong family background to be comfortable and feel you could make it yours.
Yes.
You were encouraged, and that's a gift.
I was encouraged in both directions because my parents said, "Oh yes, you must learn this language. This is the language of your future."
You're here.
But my father did not let me speak English in the house.
I see.
In the house, I had to speak Spanish
because
he wanted me to be bilingual.
You didn't lose it.
No, I didn't lose it.
Right, and that's valuable also. Being bilingual, I think the brain works better.
Yeah, well, they say that. They say that if you're bilingual, you kind of have more going for you.
Oh, sure. More synapses are being lit up.
I like to think so. And now, if what happens also is that you become your identity grows. It's like an onion. You start out with the center of the onion, but then you get more and more layers outside.
Yep.
And those layers become whatever your friends are around you. I was surrounded by Irish people, Italian people, Jewish people, people from Poland, from Russia, all over. And we learned how to sing each other's songs.
Yep.
And how to say nasty words in each other's language too.
That your parents might not have understood either. Oh, that's a private joke. That's a private joke.
We would taste each other's food too.
Before we leave winter, I have to just remind people from this area that one of our other well-known poets who, some people probably don't know this, Whittier, California is named for him. Whittier, there are Whittiers all over the country. And it's John Greenleaf Whittier, and he wrote his most famous poem, Snowbound.
Oh, yes.
When he was in Haverhill as a young person, looking out of his window and seeing, as I said, the unbelievably flat, beautiful snowfall that we get here, that it's just silent beauty.
It's glorious. It's glorious.
Silent beauty. And in that time frame, in the 1800s, there was no distraction the way we have now. We have so many distractions. And that's why you and I both try to work with children and have them find their center and find their calm and their quiet through poetry. It's a gift.
It's a gift.
How do you teach?
That poem is a gift to America. That's his masterpiece. That's one of the masterpieces of the United States.
It is. It is. Yes. And you can go to his birthplace. You can go to his birthplace and see where he wrote it, and then go to the home that he lived in as an adult in Amesbury. The birthplace is in Haverhill, and the adult home, his home is in Amesbury. And he was an abolitionist. He was just a very powerful man. And
Quaker.
During his lifetime, his birthday was a national holiday, just as Martin Luther King's birthday is a national holiday. Not very many people knew that. He was beloved in America. And one of our neighbors. Again, New England is full of poets.
Well, this is the beginning of the literature of the United States, right here.
Yes.
This.
Now, you have one from a little bit older, I think.
Oh, I do, yes. I was talking just now with you about how my father did not permit English in the house.
Yes.
Here's a poem I wrote about that, and it's called Bilingua Bilingue, because I would come home from school and try to tell him in English what I had done in school that day, and he would say, no, mijita, no, mijita, no, my little daughter. If you can tell me anything, you can tell it to me in Spanish.
Exactly.
Anything can be told in Spanish. And I would say, but I want to tell you the way my teacher said it. And he'd say, no, I want you to say it the way you would say it.
Yes.
So he really kept me bilingual, and I'm very grateful for it. And this is the poem called Bilingual Bilingue. And this is from Poetry Out Loud.
Oh,
it's
wonderful.
It's in the anthology of Poetry Out Loud.
Is that one that you might have read at in the White House? Did you read that one in the White House?
I think I may have, yes.
It sounds like it might be good enough that it would be special.
I might have. I don't remember now what I read. It was so long ago.
Okay.
Bilingual Bilingue. My father liked them separate, one there, one here, allá y aquí, as if aware that words might cut in two his daughter's heart, el corazón, and lock the alien part to what he was, his memory, his name, su nombre, with a key he could not claim. English outside this door, Spanish inside, he said, y basta. But who can divide the world, the word, mundo y palabra, from any child? I knew how to be dumb and stubborn, testaruda. Late in bed, I hoarded secret syllables I read until my tongue, mi lengua, learned to run where his stumbled. And still the heart was one. I like to think he knew that, even when proud, orgulloso, of his daughter's pen, he stood outside mis versos, half in fear of words he loved, but wanted not to hear.
That was wonderful. Did your
Well,
father?
Did
your father write poetry at all?
No, but he loved it.
He loved to hear it
because he had heard his mother reciting her own all the time. And he knew yards and yards of poetry by heart, and he would just spout it when he felt like it.
Wonderful.
So he was very proud of my poetry, but he was also divided. He had a divided heart because he wanted me to stay where he was, to stay spiritually in his place.
Okay.
And of course,
which was
children
hard.
don't do that.
That was hard. Oh,
Yes,
now that was your father's mother then, who was the poet that you mentioned?
Yes. Yes, that was.
Okay. She never came here.
No, she never did. There were other poets in the family too, quite a few.
I see. So it's rich. You have a history. You definitely have a history.
There were books in the house, and people read and people recited, and so on and so on. So I grew up with that, and I loved it right from the beginning.
That's wonderful. I have a young person's anthology here. It's called Odes to Lawrence, and it was from Lawrence school children, elementary school children in the Oliver School, and they are Spanish-speaking children. That's their first language. English is a second language for them. So for them to write these lovely Ode to Essex Arts Center, Ode to the Leonard School. I mean, it was just all over Lawrence. Here, I get so excited when I see you. You say good morning when I walk by you. I want to go in, but I say to myself, no way. I just leave, and then I return to be my best. Oh, the education you give. I want some of your knowledge you give to kids. Ode to the Leonard School. And this is from a teacher, it's a good friend of mine, and yours. I believe you know Mary O'Brien Guerrera, who is a teacher. Some people don't know that because she also owns Cafe Azteca and El Tele, the two restaurants. The El Tele is definitely, it's like a Rathskeller. It's absolutely, it should be on a college campus, because that's the type of person you're going to see in the El Tele on Essex Street. You're going to see young people coming from high school or Northern Essex Community College, and they will be sitting around with a cup of coffee for hours with one cup of coffee. Nobody chases them out, and they read poetry. They read it, they discuss it. There's a whole wall of books. It's just a wonderful place. That's
a very Hispanic thing to do, to sit around reading poetry and sharing it, yes.
Exactly. That's how you really share. And this is the book that came from her school, and she was the person who put it together in the 90s. And it was, it's a very valuable piece. And then...
Well, do you remember, I was just telling you a few minutes ago, Karen, about my friend Cesar Sanchez Beras, who's a poet who lives in Lawrence. I wanted to tell you that he had an arrangement with the teacher of creative writing here in Newburyport, whose name is Debbie Sabo.
Oh.
Debbie Sabo is a marvelous teacher in the high school here. And she said, gee, you know, I wish I could get some foreign poets here. I said, don't say it twice, because I know exactly whom you need. Right. So I got her Cesar. And for a number of years, they had an arrangement where once a year, the students from Newburyport would go to Lawrence, and then the following day by bus, they would come from Lawrence to Newburyport.
Oh, how wonderful.
They would recite poetry together. They would write it together. She would give them prompts, and they would write. And then they would have lunch, outdoor lunch out of a bag somewhere.
Right.
And that way, the two communities got to know each other.
That's wonderful.
And they got to exchange poetry and thoughts and feelings. So I was very happy about that. Well, and they did it so well that when he went away, he started teaching somewhere else. They missed him.
They missed him. I'm sure they missed him. What grade was that? Middle school age or elementary?
It was high school.
High school age. Okay, high school age. Wonderful.
Lawrence High School and Newburyport High School.
Okay, we have a wonderful, Lawrence High School does great work with they have the Bread Loaf Project at Lawrence High School.
They have all sorts of things.
They have lots of different things as far as language. Very, very good with Rich Gorham. When you mentioned Newburyport, I forgot that the lady who did this book, she edited Anne Bradstreet's works. She was from Newburyport, Nancy Virginia Ware.
Oh, and yes, she was I know not, her.
Yeah, of course everybody knew Nancy. Oh,
at
Plum Island.
She was a darling.
She was a wonderful lady. She passed away in 2017 at 92. She was a wonderful editor, and she taught. She taught in Newburyport for quite a few years. And,
she did. And she kept her pizzazz to the very end.
Yes. Oh, yes. She was a very dedicated person to Anne and to all poets. And that's how I really met Anne Bradstreet, was through Nancy Ware. So I could never, ever thank her enough for that. It was just wonderful. What else have you got to read?
Oh, I've got something called Patchwork of Dreams, which is about immigrant life, voices from the heart of the New
America. Beautiful.
Yes. And this is all immigrants and exiles and so on. And I have a poem in here. Well, I have two poems in here, and I'd like to read them both. This is my first discovery of something very negative about the United States. I fell in love with the country right away because I made friends right away. Right. And my father had told me, this is a free country. You can say what you like. You're never going to get into trouble here for criticizing the government or anything else. So I loved it. But then I was playing in the little space behind the apartment house where I lived in New York City in Manhattan, 348 West 49th.
Okay.
And there were three other girls who lived in the building, and we used to play together. So this is about us when I was about, I guess I was about 9 at this point.
Okay.
No, I was 7. I was 7, yeah.
Ah.
It's called Replay. A dusty courtyard of the inner city, Sunday, September 1939. 3 7-year-old girls, huffing and panting, are taking turns jumping an old clothesline. A younger neighbor stands up to be invited. He wears a skull cap, white shirt, black pants, old shoes. Kathy, our leader, because the rope is hers, is placid. We're not supposed to play with Jews. I am foreign born. I don't quite know what Jews are, and think in my ignorance that everybody's friends. But since, from the sudden aging of his eyes, something's been said for which there are no amends. Dorothy scans the ground. We're in her yard. And I wonder if there's something I should say, but what and to whom? And so I fidget with the knotted ends of the rope, and he goes away. And that's all of the story as it happened. But in my dream, we always call him back to say the words that heal our common exile and switch the looming future from its track.
Yes.
And this is one of my most painful memories, because when I went and said to my father, who are these people who wear the little caps, and people say you're not supposed to play with them? Why is that? And my father said, well, they're wrong. Your friend was wrong. You're supposed to play with everybody.
Yes.
And the reason they're here is that, unlike us who have only been running for a few years, these people have been running for 2,000 years. Because life has been very unjust to them. And there are people all over the world who are running like us from one kind of danger or another. People who are exiled because of their color, because of their religion, because of their nationality, because of one thing or another. But the world is full of people who want to destroy somebody else. So that's how I got to know what Jews were. And this poem has always stayed with me because of the casualness with which people say, oh, we don't deal with this one, we don't deal with that one. It reminds me of words coming from the White House these days all too often. And it's sad that the feeling has not disappeared yet. I want this feeling that I'm conveying here to disappear yesterday, really.
Yeah, the judgment, and you were young enough and not knowing, you had no other friend with you. If you had had another friend with you, maybe you would have said to the other girls, wait, why?
Well, why is that? Well, I still was just learning English. I couldn't
so you weren't
said
prepared
anything
to do
very
that
much
yet.
anyway. But it seemed hard to me because I came from a country where we were all technicolor.
Yes.
My family comes in every color. So I had no idea that you could be turned away because of the color of your skin.
Yeah, yeah, yep.
And this is from the same book, but it was written a few years later, quite a few years later, as a matter of fact. And this is about a Jewish holiday that everybody turned up for. It's in Queens, where I lived after I got married, and it's called Purim Parade.
I love this one.
And Purim, of course, is the feast of Queen Esther and her fighting for the rights of her people and the dignity of her people.
She was a strong queen.
She was a strong queen, and in Queens, in the neighborhood that I lived in Flushing, the whole world lived there. I mean, everybody. You walk in the streets and hear so many different languages. You didn't know where the people came from, but they were all neighbors.
Wonderful.
And this is me watching the parade. Who's this coming now? Queen Esther in tinsel wig. 2 sheiks on skateboards. Tyrannosaurus Rex clutching his mother's hand. Death striding on stilts. A coven of small witches shrieking in Spanish. The temple youth group twirling gilt batons, shivering in their red tights. St. Benedict School, the Emerald Band, elegant in kilts, bagpipes, skirling Hatikva. And
The
that's a
colors
place
and
where,
the colors and the sounds, and you just, it was a child's view of a wonderful time.
yes, it was. That's right. It was the way the world should be.
Exactly. Exactly.
I felt that this is home now.
Yes.
I was very happy in Queens.
Yep.
And the Emerald Band really did come out in kilts. And that was an Irish Catholic school, as a matter of fact. And what were they playing on the bagpipes? They were playing Hatikva, the national anthem of Israel. So,
and then skateboards. It was wonderful.
And skateboards. So that's the other side of the United States, and I love it. I love this country with all my heart.
Oh, it was brought, everything comes to New York. Everything comes to New York.
Everybody's here.
Everything. And we're here today on a very interesting day for that. We really are. It was 19 years ago today. Now, I want to ask if you remember, we're going to switch now to another local poet from Lawrence, Robert Frost.
Oh,
now
it's one of the loves of my life.
I know. I don't know if you have in your, I forgot to ask you to bring with you from one room to another your translation. Do you have the pink covered book?
Of course I do.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Yes,
it's worth waiting for, Rhina.
Yes.
As you disappear, there you go.
I'm going to get it right here.
Oh, good. You find it. I forgot to bring it.
This one.
That one. There you go. There you go.
This is my collection of translations that I've done of Robert Frost.
Frost, yes, in English and Spanish.
The title is Algo hay que no es amigo de los muros. Something there is that doesn't love a wall.
Exactly.
Which is, of course, the opening line of Mending Wall.
Yes.
And I love it. But I'm going to read something very familiar here. Do you have, well, I won't ask if you've got a favorite. I'll just read.
Well, the pasture, I can tell you, Leslie Lee Francis, his granddaughter, her favorite is the pasture. If you have the pasture.
I do have the pasture.
Good. How long did this take you? It was a labor of love.
Oh, it was. It took several years.
Yes.
But I can't find the pasture right now.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what I would like to read, because everybody loves it and knows it. It's The Road Not Taken.
Oh, yes.
So kind of, I read that?
Yes, please.
Okay, I think that's the one that young people are most familiar with.
In both languages.
Oh, yes, sure.
Yes.
Here it is. Here's the original. He's my favorite poet, my favorite English language poet he is.
Many people have him as their favorite.
Yeah. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden back. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. El camino no escogido. En un bosque amarillo mi camino se bifurcó, y yo, que entre dos sendas me sentí un solo viajero dividido, lejos seguí, con ojo pensativo, aquel que se perdió por las malezas. Mas luego tomé el otro, que era igual, grato, de hierbas frescas alfombrado, quizás con menos tránsito, y quizás por eso tentador, como si más necesitara el paso. Aunque vi claro que esa mañana cada cual yacía en verdor sin señal de paso alguno. Reservé el otro, ay, para otro día. Mas las sendas se confunden y sabía que no se torna hacia atrás desde el futuro. Esto lo he de contar con un suspiro, lejos años allá, con insistencia. En un bosque, entre dos, seguí un camino, y fue el menos transitado mi destino, y con cuál incalculable diferencia.
Oh, it's beautiful in either language. Absolutely beautiful.
Well, I like to write them so they rhyme the same way. They have the same rhyme scheme as the original.
That's what took you so long.
Yeah, and also I use the same meter.
Yes, yes.
Try to use the same meter.
You're a stickler for perfection in a poem.
Well, I like to be faithful to the original poet.
I was just going to say, if you have the responsibility of changing the language of a very well-known poet, and you know the people from the Spanish language are going to really appreciate it if you do it right, it's worth it. It's worth the time.
Yeah. Oh, it's worth it. I love translating because it makes me feel that I'm kind of getting the two halves of my identity in the same room. I'm kind of being the whole person,
right?
English and Spanish,
right?
Well, that's how I feel.
Which is not possible by most people. It just isn't.
Well, you have to be bilingual to do it. So every time I do it, I have to say, thank you, Papa.
But you also have to have a talent for the sound of the words and the flow.
Well, you're a poet. You understand that. You know that poetry is a form of music.
Exactly. You
and
have
it's
with the
music made out of language.
You know what? We're going to have another session. We're going to have a part 2, because we haven't even talked about Mark Shore. We haven't talked about Seamus Heaney. We haven't talked about Powwow River. We have to have a part 2. Would you mind coming back for a part 2?
No, I would love it.
Okay. I mean, I really want to do that. So right now we'll end here, and we'll begin again with Seamus Heaney and Mark Shore. That's never bad.
That's a date.
That's never bad.
I loved Mark Shore.
I know you do. You could talk an hour for Mark Shore alone.
I miss him to this day. To this day, I miss him.
Oh, we all do.
Yes.
Well,
thank you so much.
I am so glad I can't thank you enough. I really can't. And to be continued. So this ends this session, and please come back for session 2 of Spotlight on the Valley of the Poets, which is in the Merrimack Valley of Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and wherever there are poets and they have a valley, that's where they are. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. I really appreciated it. And keep writing.
Mm-hmm.